Living in the Past is a Turtle, Mysteries of Azeroth, and Everlook Broadcasting production. This is Living in the Past, your Everlook Broadcasting Company monthly-ish show about all things Turtle, Mysteries of Azeroth. Today is Friday, October 4th, 2024, and I'm Dan, your host for the next hour. I say monthly-ish because I feel like I'm doing them a little sooner than monthly, so like every fortnight plus a few days. I'm not the best at math. If any of you have seen me play Satisfactory, you're gonna know that. So we'll call it monthly. Certainly the next episode, we're recording this October 4th. We're recording it the morning, the afternoon actually, that it's going to be aired. So the next episode is going to be about a month from now, and we're going to talk more details on that in our third segment. We got a lot to talk about today, though. Because not only do we have everything that happened in A Look Under the Shell from a couple weeks ago, talking about big things on the horizon, not just Kara 40, but everything in 117.2, and a couple things for future patches, because we're already looking to what is 118 then? What is 119? I don't actually know patch numbers, to be honest. Those I'm pulling entirely out of my butt. However, we do know a little bit, a tidbit, a touch about what might be upcoming. So we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. Obviously, we have to talk about the imminent arrival. For those of you who played Mass Effect 2, one of the greatest DLCs that came out for The Arrival. Prepare for the arrival. Angry Reaper noises here. It's soon. Hashtag soon. Everyone needs to be ready. Please, for the love of God, be ready. That's going to be a lot of our first segment here, plus a whole load more. In our second segment, we're going to actually dial in on something that was discussed very briefly on A Look Under the Shell, but might actually have pretty massive implications. And we're gonna go into that with the islands that are in the bays. I say bays plural, but that may not be truly accurate. Obviously, Menethil Bay is the biggest one, but a lot of the bays of the Eastern Kingdoms and some of those islands. That obviously, with the focus of Under the Shell being mostly about Kara 40 and the different sets and whatnot, and asking questions about those. It was glossed over, but I actually want to bring it back here because that may be a lot more important than we think. So we're going to talk about that in our second segment. And then our last segment, announcements, congratulations, a few other things, random tidbits, some show and radio planning coming up here for the next few months, just to give people a good idea of what to expect as we progress through 117.2 and beyond, and just what we'll be doing to make sure people have a good heads up for things. I like to give people, a good plan, a good strategy that we're going to focus on. And as a personal side note, the audio quality might be a little bit better for today. I have a new mic filter that I've been using that has been doing a world of good. So you should get less pops on the mic and a little smoother voice. So hopefully people are enjoying that. Now, let's get into... I've wasted over 4 minutes already. Let's get into this first segment here. Quickly, we're going to go over patch notes. We have two sets of patch notes we need to talk about. One from the 17th of September and one from the 25th of September. The 18th of September... I might have said a different date, but the 18th of September patch notes, or change log rather, The big ones, charge fixing. Charge having its positioning fixed. That's actually really big because for those that don't know, charge is really weird when it comes to how it works in Vanilla WoW. Really up through, I believe, Wrath. To be honest, through Wrath, it was really weird. Charge has the ability to pretty dramatically alter someone's not just positioning, obviously, but their momentum in the world. One thing I like to do on my warrior regularly is if I see something way down below me and I'm way above it and I want to kill that thing, I will just leap off that cliff and anti-gravity charge onto them, taking zero fall damage. It doesn't always work, and I've talked about this before, but it somewhat reliably works. Charge is weird. So the fact that it's now taking you to the edge of the target's combat range, which is considered where melee swings can begin, instead of center mass, that's actually pretty huge and actually does a lot of good, not just for general positioning, because sometimes that can be really wonky and teleport you through the bump map for the world, and then you're suddenly careening down into infinity. This actually also might do some good for boss encounters. And I'm curious because obviously this is from the 18th, and we've had a little time to percolate on it. So I'm curious if intercepting into bosses now is less dangerous. Because generally speaking, that can be a little risky. So I'm kind of curious about that. Anti-spam chat restrictions no longer affect looking for group. That's really good. And newly created level 1 characters have no longer been affecting faction balance restrictions. Also very good. Moving on. September 25th patch notes. Groups formed through Looking for Turtle can no longer be converted into raids. I don't know why that was an issue. Or I have no background on that, I should say. So I'm not sure what's going on there. There's apparently an issue where using the unconscious dig rat would unexpectedly despawn the player's current pet. That sounds like a hunter problem. And also, the Scourge Invasion was reworked to function on Telebeam, and we will get to that later on. Those were the very short September 25th patch notes because, hey, guess what? It's all hands on deck for 117.2 right now. So, that should give you a good indication as to what's going on. That's all the patch notes. That's it. That's everything there. Well, there were other patch notes for September 18th. But I actually can't open those links right now, which is really weird. I can't read like the lengthened patch notes. I'm trying to figure out why. I'm very curious as to why. One thing I will also say, and I'm not going to go through and highlight all of this, but if you don't follow the Turtle WoW Twitter, please, for the love of all that is holy in the light, do so, because they have been posting so much. So very, 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 very much. That's all I'm going to say, because there's some previews on there. There are some previews for content that they haven't even been talking about, per se. I mean, it's mentioned in the roadmap, but they haven't really been vocalizing it, that you all need to check out. Please look through it. There's some really interesting previews on there. Now, what I want to really open with discussion-wise today is 117.2, what I'm doing to prepare, and important reminders for you all to consider as we hit this great moment of change. 117.2 involves a lot. We have the class changes. We have alternate tier sets. We have the Kara 40, which is a whole new tier of rating, which is something we have yet to truly see from the Turtle WoW team. This is going to be a momentous occasion. So naturally, and I've said this before, be ready to relearn what you need to be doing as insert class here. For example, you might need to change what consumables you bring. You might need to reprioritize certain stats. You might need to change your rotation. You might need to change your enchants on your gear. There are things that I think a lot of people aren't necessarily considering, or haven't seen discussed, rather, that it would do everyone a great service, especially to yourself and to your raid team, if you took your time. Take your time. Don't be ready to rush into, okay, patch just hit, we're doing Nax right now. Bad idea. Hold it, pause button, Chief, pump the brakes there, sport. Calm it down. Take your time, look at your gear, understand what you need to do as insert class here. For example, as a Shadow Priest, I need to see if any of the secondary stats, crit, hit, any of those needs have changed. Because right now, when it comes to Shadow Priests, the only thing we need is a tiny little bit of hit and spell power. That may change. That could change when the patch hits. I might suddenly be able to include haste in what I do. I'm hoping it's crit. For context, I have never been on the class council, so I'm not sure what's going to happen. But the fact of the matter is that I hope it's crit for me. So the thing I'm going to do as soon as that patch hits is, before I even consider switching any of my gear over, because I have plenty of tier 1, I have plenty of tier 2, I have 5 or 6 pieces for tier 3 turn-ins that I'm just holding on to be like, all right, what do I got to do? What do I need to do here? Before I do any of that, I'm going to take a very hard look at what class changes came in place and how they affect my stat priority. Because if that changes at all, suddenly I need to look at what the actual math is behind, okay, this much spell power is equal to this much crit. It's equal to this much hit, this much haste. Whatever that change has been with baseline character mechanics, or baseline class mechanics, I should say, that is going to directly impact any other choice that all of you make. Even if you're not level 60, this could directly impact you. Even if you're in your 40s, your 30s, these class changes may directly impact what gear you're equipping. So, before you do anything, check what you need. Have a direct understanding of how your class works now with 117.2. If it's changed at all, there may be a situation I can imagine might be Fury Warriors in particular, may not change at all, or may not change much. They're doing just fine. Trust me. Fury Warriors, I'm talking to you all right now. Fury Warriors, you're good. We're good. We're okay. Trust me, we're okay. So I can imagine probably not going to be a ton of changes there. Maybe, probably. I don't know. Maybe there is. I'm almost hoping Fury Warriors don't get buffed, because the amount of complaining from non-Fury Warrior players, that can be a little bit a lot. That can be a little bit a lot. I'm going to get some hate for that. That's fine. My Fury Warrior isn't even my main, and I'm like, they're good. You know what? We're overpowered. Anywho. Next thing, obviously, as I mentioned, is then looking at the gear to reflect what those new changes are. So looking at the alternate tier sets, seeing what I do want to change out, seeing the cost of each of them, because from my understanding from previous conversations, and this stuff may have changed for tiers 1 and 2, it's just hey, I already have the piece. The piece just drops all the time. I want a different kind of piece. And I go and I exchange it for a different kind of piece. Maybe there's a money cost that they're associating with that. Maybe there's a materials cost. I would understand that if there is. However, I need to understand the cost. Now, with Tier 3 and Tier 2.5, kind of, we already have a good understanding of those costs, and I assume those are going to stay consistent. So I need to understand what I need to spend when it comes to what gear I need to switch out tier-wise. Because obviously, none of the priest tiers really help me that much. 2.5 has a few good pieces, but the fact of the matter is that 2.5 just is not great in general. There's better pieces out there just floating in the breeze. I'm looking at you, hat off of Hagen, with all of your goddamn spell power. That's a discussion for another time. That's a point I'm not even going to get to. Thank you, Legs of Polarity, for being my only option. Sorry, I'm getting into it. I need to not. I need to not do that because I'm going to get spicy. Lastly, I'm going to look at the different changes for professions. Now, obviously, jewel crafting is the big one. With jewel crafting, there's going to be a lot of new. There's going to be a lot of just new available. And we're not going to have a firm grasp of truly what the profession is capable of until people grind it out to 300. This is, again, why I say patience is a virtue. Because we're not going to know exactly what's going on with things right off the bat. But there might be other additions to other professions. I am assuming it's not just jewel crafting. I'm making that assumption, but I'm assuming it's not just jewel crafting that's getting the big polish. I assume there are other things that are going to happen. Take your time. Do not rush through this patch. Make sure you have plenty of time when it's scheduled to happen. I am constantly checking myself to make sure I haven't spilled beans on the exact date. And that's kind of why I don't look at spoilers or information in the developer channels, because I sometimes struggle with what I can and can't say. And unfortunately, I did see the release date for 1.17.2, and I have to be like, nope, Dan, you can't say that. Nope, Dan, you can't say that. Nope, you can't say that, Dan. Don't say that. And I'm constantly checking myself to make sure I don't have that spoiler in this. Moving on, though, there is, and I kind of talked about that with jewel crafting, but there's other things happening with 1.17.2 that the developers have talked about before that kind of gets lost in the mix a little bit, that I think people should also keep in mind. Other things that are happening, the dungeon expansions. We've seen some really gorgeous images of the different dungeon expansions happening. And there's multiple. There's Dead Mines, there's Wailing Caverns, there's Scarlet Monastery. We have seen those pictures, and they're gorgeous. So keep in mind, as you are leveling, those dungeon expansions are going to offer new gear opportunities, more quests, more things to do as you're getting out there and kicking ass. Yes, very good. Something that was hinted at in the previous Under the Shell. We have new dungeons coming. And it's really exciting. If you don't know the details on that yet, don't worry, it's in the previous episode of A Look Under the Shell. Please, I would encourage you to go back and listen to it. Not only is it available on the YouTube page whenever you would like, but I do try to keep those in rotation on the radio for a little bit after. I believe with this episode coming out, I am taking that episode out of rotation, but it's still going to be available on the YouTube page as you would like. It's already up there. It's been up there. Please go and watch it, listen to it as you would like. And it's a good way to also review. I mentioned jewel crafting there. Also, and this has kind of been glossed over multiple times, but there are pretty awesome cosmetic and style updates coming out for 1.17.2. They've been talked about very briefly over the last 4 or 5 months, but they are coming. And not only are you going to have style changes and whatnot, but obviously with new gear being put in, you're going to have new transmog opportunities. Certainly, I'm curious what's going to drop off the Death Knight in Scarlet Monastery, because I bet there's going to be some spooky stuff there. I bet you there's going to be some spooky stuff there, and that excites me. There's going to be so much happening, not just with 1.17.2, but the couple patches following it. And to talk about that and to build off a point that we talked about in a look under the shell a couple weeks ago, in our next segment, we're going to go into the islands that are in not just Barradin Bay. I think I called it Menethil Bay earlier. That's incorrect. It's Barradin Bay. But not just in Barradin Bay, but off the coast of the Eastern Kingdoms. There's a lot of them. Well, I shouldn't say there's a lot of them, but there's a lot of names for them. So in the next segment, we're going to go over that, talk about the importance of why the developer we talked to in a look under the shell hinted at some of that. And then in our third segment, we're going to go through a lot of announcements, a lot of upcoming features, and talk about a few fun things. Now to our music. I'm in a very energized, almost like metal mood. So we're going to play some of that heavier stuff that I can really enjoy. First song of the first break here, we're doing Power of the Horde. We're taking it back to Warcraft 3, Level 10 Elite Tauren Chieftain, Power of the Horde. Then Symphony of Destruction by Megadeth. And then closing up our first break here, Children of the Elder God by Old Gods of Asgard. Our second segment here on Living in the Past coming up right after this. The musical tracks for this episode have been removed due to YouTube copyright. To listen to the full episodes with music, tune in to Everlook Broadcasting every Friday with the in-game radio widget. Welcome back to Living in the Past with myself, Dan, in our second segment of the broadcast this evening for our October 4th, 2024 episode. Let's talk about the Eastern Kingdoms. Now, in the previous episode of A Look Under the Shell, our guest mentioned that there was an island in the works. That's all that he said. Could not give us any more details. And that's okay. We know Tol Barad is already in the works. Like, we're well aware of that. And that's been talked about briefly multiple times. This is not Tol Barad that he was talking about, apparently. This is another one. So, if we reference, and I'm going to dial it back, we're dialing it back quite a few years here to Warcraft 2. If we're looking at the map of the Eastern Kingdoms during Warcraft 2, we have multiple different islands that we're talking about here. Obviously, there are two big ones. There are two big ones that we could see development for. Kul Tiras and the Tomb of Sargeras. Those are kind of the big ticket items. Now with Kul Tiras, that's a big thing. That's a big hill to climb. Like, Gilneas is one thing because we already had a little bit of an idea as to what Gilneas might look like. Obviously, the Turtle devs did their own thing with Gilneas, but we already knew, okay, it was a walled-off peninsula nation. It's small, but resource-rich. And we kind of had those ideas. Kul Tiras, we know as an island nation that survived off of its wits and its immense fleet. other than that, we really don't have an idea as to what Kulturas itself looked like, and I'm not considering any of the Battle for Azeroth things for many, many, many reasons, all of them personal and very negative. So we're not going to go into that. Kulturas, as we see it, is south of Hillsbrad and Gilneas, sitting in the Great Sea along the coast of both Cosmodan and Azeroth, also known as Stormwind. Generally speaking, when I'm talking about Warcraft 1 and 2, I will call Stormwind Azeroth because that's what it was called at that time, and that's what the books reference it as. But the fact of the matter is that it's just Stormwind now, so keep that in mind. Kulturas is the largest of these islands out there, roughly about maybe twice the size of Gilneas. Now, with that being said, this map is really not accurate when it comes to size or scale. The land mass has obviously evolved massively from Warcraft 2 to Warcraft 3 to World of Warcraft Vanilla. But we can still say, okay, it's an island nation. It's not an island, it's an island nation, which is going to make it a decent size bigger than any of the other islands that we might see. Probably the best example of which is the island off the coast of Hillsbrad and South Shore, with all those elite undead on them, if that's going to be the best image I can conjure. We have seen the team tackle islands before. We have Tel Abyb, for example. We have Gilligim's Rest, or Gilligim's Island, rather. And these have been fun zones to go out into. Have they necessarily had the bite or impact that one of these islands might have? I don't think so. I think whatever they decide they're doing in the Great Sea off the coast of Eastern Kingdoms is going to have a lot more bite and impact than that. And for that reason, no matter what island it is, no matter where we're going with that, certainly it's trying to word this correctly. It's going to be a heavy undertaking, no matter what it is. Even if it isn't Kulturas. What if it's Zul'Dare? What if it's Crestfall? What if it's one that wasn't named? Because we do have islands off the coast of Tyr's Hand, for example. They're small. They are tiny. They are slim. But they do exist. We have islands off the coast of Lordaeron. They are small, but they exist. And we already know for a fact that with the Tirisfal Highlands, they're willing to explore a lot of that lore that was hinted at, or the world building that may not have been brought forward from Warcraft 1 and 2. We actually see that a lot with the dwarves and a lot of the wetlands stuff, but that's neither here nor there. There are plenty of islands to choose from. I mentioned Zul'Dare there for a minute. Zul'Dare, we know for a fact, was a forest troll. I don't think it was like a stronghold, but it definitely was a large set of settlements or settlement. We also know Zul'Dare wasn't one island. It was a series of islands. It was an island chain. Smaller islands, but you could get to each of them easily. And in fact, they may have been part of a larger landmass before the cataclysm, not the cataclysm, good Lord, the sundering happened. My goodness. The cataclysm. Oh yeah, we're going to the cataclysm, everyone. Hey, I know we weren't going to TBC. We weren't going to Outlands, but hey, Turtle's going to cataclysm, everyone. Oh man, I would quit instantly. Ooh. Oh, that would be uncomfortable. That's not happening. That is a joke. Zul'Dare is a series of islands that the forest trolls, the Yamani, used for setting up their fleets. They used that as a a muster point as they got their fleets down from the borders of Quel'Thalas. Took a while to float them down there, but Mission 3 in Warcraft 2's campaign for the Horde was setting up in the Zuldare region for the for that fleet. There's also Crestfall. I don't really know anything about Crestfall. I got no information about Crestfall. That and Baelor, I don't know anything about. Maybe one of the books explored Crestfall and Baelor, but I don't know anything about those two. Crestfall is just off the coast of Kul'Tiras, and Baelor is far, far, far south off the coast of what I assume is... Stormwind is way... I don't know how they process this map, but it's off the coast of Stormwind-ish. I'll say Azeroth in general. Those two, I got nothing. I know nothing about either. So those are going to be a mystery to me. Maybe they were in the books at some point. I don't recognize most of the novels as canonical because honestly, a lot of them are bad. But that's just me. That's my opinion. Last one, and it's kind of a big one on the map, is the Tomb of Sargeras. The Tomb of Sargeras was the location of multiple major events in the Warcraft franchise. It's also shifted positions multiple times. Originally south of Kul'Tiras, off the coast of Baelor and Azeroth, in the Great Sea. That was during the Warcraft 2 times. In Warcraft 3, it shoved itself up way north of the Maelstrom to the Lost Isles. Way, way, way up north. I don't know exactly why it did do that, but we have seen weirder map shifts. We can talk about Moonglade suddenly rotating almost 180 degrees around Hyjal between Warcraft 3 and World of Warcraft. It isn't the weirdest map shift. However, a couple major things have happened at the Tomb of Sargeras. One, that's where Egwene put his quote-unquote body, which was really just his avatar, deep under the ocean and said, nope, you stay there. Fun fact, he didn't. Next, we have Gul'dan raising the Lost Isles up from the ocean bed to reach the Tomb of Sargeras, just to have most of his clan and other clans ripped apart by maddened demons. And that's where Gul'dan died, and suddenly his skull started teleporting everywhere around the world of Warcraft. Don't get me started. His skull is a very popular item. That's all I'm going to say. We have multiple things that have happened at the Tomb of Sargeras. There's a lot that could be done with this. Obviously, in Legion, Tomb of Sargeras was a very big raid. It was a huge raid. It was kind of a focal point for the whole expansion. And that's okay. That's fine. Next, we do see a lot of it in Warcraft 3 with the Lost Isles and exploring a lot of that and that side of the Night Elf lore. And that kind of told the story of the Naga. There's a lot of things that could happen because of that, too. We could see racial expansion. We could see new things and new item sets from previous eras included because of that. There's a lot that could be developed if we have that kind of holdover from a previous time. The fact of the matter is that the Tomb of Sargeras is not exactly a popular tourist destination. No one's really going there, so The player characters going there would mean digging up a lot of old stuff that hasn't been touched in a while. And also dealing with a lot of demons. Which, I don't think we should echo previous expansions. I don't think it's a good idea. I like how the Turtle team has looked at Karazhan from a fresh perspective. We shouldn't always just say, hey, this was a raid, let's also raid this too. New stuff is always a good idea, in my opinion. So I don't want to sit here and say, yeah, hey, we should make the Tomb of Sargeras into a raid. Yay! Because that feels a little hypocritical for me. It would be a good idea, to be honest, and I argue, I'm arguing with myself right now about that, but the fact of the matter is that it would be. It would be a fun raid. And eventually, maybe we would get to fight the Avatar of Sargeras. Remember, that wasn't Sargeras that Egwene fought. That was an Avatar of Sargeras. So that's important. It's important to remember that. I know it's a minor distinction, but it is important. Those are the major islands that the devs might be working on. The fact of the matter is that we don't know. We don't know exactly what they're working on. But we already knew Tol Barad was in the mix. Now something else is coming. What is that? We will see. We will see. I'm excited. I want to see what's going on. Coming up next, we're going to do announcements. We're going to put out some thank yous, some fun stuff, talk about what is coming up next, and plans for the next few months. So, don't go anywhere. We're going to play some music now. We're going to have Take Control by Old Gods of Asgard. I know we just played Children of the Elder God, but both of these are great metal tracks. Really good stuff. After that, Ace of Spades by Motorhead and The Trooper by Iron Maiden. More of Living in the Past coming up right after this. The musical tracks for this episode have been removed due to YouTube copyright. To listen to the full episodes with music, tune in to Everlook Broadcasting every Friday with the in-game radio widget. I think the music this week is just a big part of me also being energized about the hopeful, maybe, potentially, soon, #soon, TM, release of 1.17.2. I'm excited. I need it to happen soon. I'm craving it. And as soon as I do, I'm going to go through every single one of my characters and be like, okay, what do I got to do? I'm going to look at the priest, look at the warrior, and now at level 40 almost 41-ish, the Moonglow druid that I've been leveling. That's been another fun throwback to the druid I used to play back in vanilla. I love Moonglow. Moonglow is life. Now, in our final segment here of Living in the Past for October 4th, 2024, we have some shout-outs, we have some fun things, a few reminders. First off, hopefully everyone has been enjoying the Hollows End theme segments. We put them back in rotation for the spooky season, and hopefully you are enjoying them. It's been a lot of fun to get to hear them again on the radio. We do have a few new ones in there too, so hopefully you've caught the new segments as well. They are there. They're interspersed in. They're sprinkled in. Also, I do want to give a quick thank you to Vrograg. For those that don't know, Vrograg has been doing his regular weekly news reads and updates like clockwork every single week. And let me tell you what, it has been a delight to have him doing those. Now, they're always ready to go on Mondays, and he always does a stellar job with them. Next up here, a reminder. Next month, in our early November episode, we're going to be doing the last guild shoutouts for the year. I won't be doing that in the December episode for Living in the Past. So make sure, if you want to get your guild shout out there, make sure it's updated, make sure it's typed out well. The Discord for Turtle WoW has a full set of sections for you to make sure those are posted up and good to go. The easier it is to read through, the more detailed it is, the better it is for me. And the easier you make this is honestly true, and this is kind of insight into how a lot of broadcasting works. The easier you make my life, the better chance that I'm actually going to use your guild shout out. So before the early November, I'm thinking like first week of November episode of Living in the Past, make sure your guild promotion in Discord is updated and looking fresh. If you don't have the most updated information in your post, I might just put out whatever you have there, which might be old info. Maybe you're looking for, druids and shamans right now, but in your post, you still had it set to warriors and tanks and other things. So make sure that stuff is updated. Make sure that's updated, please. Next up, a quick note. If you didn't know, and I actually didn't know this until the other day, Turtle WoW is turning 6 years old. Turtle has been around for 6 whole years now. That's mind-blowing. I don't know this for a fact, but that feels like one of the longest lived private servers for World of Warcraft ever. Obviously, Nostalgius didn't get that close. Most other servers did not get that close. I think Warmane might actually be longer lived. I think Warmane might. But that's neither here nor there. Turtle WoW turning 6 years old. And on top of that, Everlook Radio, as of this month, is now 1 year old. And next week, not this week, but next week, is the 1 year anniversary of the first episode of Living in the Past. How about that? So happy 6 years to Turtle. Happy 1 year, Everlook Broadcasting Company. And a shout out to all of our wonderful staff and volunteers that we have for that. And hey, happy birthday to Living in the Past here. 1 year for me. Next, we're just running through these as fast as possible. The next Under the Shell. A Look Under the Shell is scheduled, hopefully, will be scheduled to cover everything we know about 1.17.2 after its release. Keep that in mind. The next Look Under the Shell will be covering 1.17.2 after its release. So we're going to be able to go into a lot more detail with the patch, what's going on, and what people might need to take some time to understand. But if you need a good catch-up or need a good synopsis for the patch, that might be a really good resource. And as always, I encourage people to review A Look Under the Shells as often as possible because we pack a lot of information into there. It may be a conversation style, but we pack a lot of information there. Next up. Telebeam, congratulations, moving to Phase 4, which means Telebeam now has access to Naxxramas and Karazhan 10. So congratulations to Telebeam. You're moving forward in life. Hopefully, you're taking down Nax as fast as you can. I believe Rograi actually did some coverage on that the other week. Lastly, but certainly not least, personal friend of mine, Toll, some of you know Toll, has decided to rejoin us. And I'm so very glad that he has. So if you know Toll, or you see Toll, or you're just stuck in a group with him at some point, give him a hearty welcome back, and hope, along with him, that he finally gets that Thunder Fury put together that he's been working on for ages. Welcome back, buddy. Welcome back, Toll. We're happy to have you here. All right, that's all. That's all we got for this episode of Living in the Past for October 4th, 2024. Thank you for taking the time to join me today. Our nostalgia continues even though today's broadcast is at an end, and I hope you enjoyed the show here today. A huge thank you to the Turtle developers, moderators, staff, and volunteers. Without the entire team's hard work and dedication, we wouldn't have this station or server group. An additional thank you to the audio engineers and creators here for the use of their soundtracks they've created, which we use for segment transitions and intro audio. If you'd like to find out more about what I do, I invite you to check out my Twitch channel at twitch.tv/DanaNation and my latest series on Satisfactory and its 1.0 release, available on my YouTube page as well at youtube.com/TheDanNation. Until 1.17.2 launches, let's keep living in the past.